If you're here in person or on Zoom, grab something to eat. We have soup and bread, there's wine. If you're on Zoom, grab yourself a glass of wine. You're in for a treat. I'm gonna start before I give over the stage to Jackie with just showing you the dough and doing the blessing on it together, doing the mitzvah, and then we'll talk more about the mitzvah a little later. So I'm going to put both doughs together, ready to cover them together. I use yours because it's a little bigger.
Funny.
Okay, so we'll talk more about the technicalities of the mitzvah if we get time for it. If not, there's you can read about it in the book. But the mitzvah of we're going to do the mitzvah of separating challah. There's 2 5-pound doughs here. I'm just covering them together to make it into one. And to make the blessing, you need to have a certain amount of dough. This is more than enough dough. If it would be less than 2 pounds, you don't separate challah. From 2 pounds to 3 pounds, you separate, but you don't make the blessing. And 3 pounds plus, you separate and you make the blessing. So this is about 10 pounds. You separate a piece of challah. Just wash my hands with soap, and you actually you say the blessing, then you separate. So the blessing, you can say it along with me, is Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Kiddushanu B'mitzvotav Tzivanu Lahafrish Challah. You separate a piece and you say Harei Zeh Challah. This is being dedicated, consecrated, separated to be challah, and I am going to wrap it in foil and put it at the bottom of the oven where nothing else is cooking, and just burn it. Not to absolute, just enough that it's not really edible anymore. And we'll talk about what and why, a little bit more about that a little later in the class. Start with our demo. Jackie's origin story. Okay, my husband texted me and I said, let's do a hands-on piece of this. You know, it's challah. The topic is challah. We have to do something with challah. So I don't know, he just Googled and he went on Facebook and he sends me a screenshot of the challah girl, and I'm like, sounds cool. And then he texts me a few minutes and he's like, is it Jackie? And I'm like, I don't know if it is. That's so cool. And then I'm like, wait, I think I taught her how to make challah, right? Yes. So when our kids were in preschool together, one of the things one of the prizes at the auction, is this the story? Yes. It's amazing. One of the prizes at the auction was that come over to my house and bake challah with me. And Jackie won it, and she came over with Ziva, I think, playing on the floor in the kitchen with Mendel.
And one in a baby carrier.
And we baked challah together, and now she's the challah girl. So cool. I'm so happy to have a part of it. I made this dough at home yesterday. It's not the same recipe that I taught Jackie many years ago. I've kind of found another one lately that I like using that has honey. It's a 1 bowl dough, and it's got honey instead of sugar. But it's not that different. Are you still using the same recipe?
I judged it.
Okay. What did you say? You judged it? She judged it. And I judged that. So that's awesome. Jackie, tell us what you're doing with us tonight. We're doing toppings. We're not doing twists.
Right.
We're doing toppings. Okay. Go ahead.
Do I need to stand for that?
You could stand kind of so. Can you see me? Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yes.
Okay. So I started this business. I have a cottage license to bake in my home in 2019. After Leah taught me challah, I started making it every week, and then I started bringing it to Habaraz, and I stopped doing what I was doing, and my friends were like, you should open this business, you should make challah all the time. And I couldn't really imagine that, but then I saw someone stuffing Nutella into challah on Instagram, and I decided that had to be done. And so I started making things with stuffings in them, and I got really obsessed. So I decided to launch the business in 2019, and I bake from my home, and then people pick up from my house once a week. And I don't focus so much on the braiding or the look, which is important. But for me, what I like doing is eating. And so I focus on the flavors. And so I'm all about stuffing and working things into the challah. So I just wanted to share some of the good ones I've come up with. Like there have been successes like halva and chocolate together, or I have one this week that I do. It's a kugel stuffed challah with noodle pudding and a pimento cheese and Ritz cracker one. So you get really wild, like you could get really wild. I've also had some failures, like cheese doodles stuffed inside, not good. Mac and cheese, surprisingly, you'd think with kugel, mac and cheese would be great. It's not great. And most recently, I took beef, bacon, and dates and tried to make a beef bacon center, and it just didn't really hit the spot. So, you just got to try and fail. But today, we're not going to fail. We are doing 3 tried and true. So I don't know what we'll do first. Maybe we'll do the sweet first. So I thought one of the fun things about stuffing with Oreos is that they always taste good in the challah. They just like meshed well together. I don't know what it is. But we're going to do a little twist on stuffing the challah. We're going to take the Oreo apart and we're going to scoop out the cream. And then we're going to pick a color, add a few drops, and make it colorful, and then stuff it back in. So,
wait, adding drops and adding color?
yes, we're going to take the cream out of the Oreos. So I don't know how we want to.
Needs to be louder.
You want to, okay, we'll try to get you a little louder. Jackie,
Yes,
we'll
please.
try to talk a little louder.
And also, let's put this closer.
Okay.
That's better.
So I guess everyone will get there.
What if you put the long one on one of the books to give it a little height? Sorry,
How many of us are there? 5, 6, 7? One down. All right, so
Is that better, y'all?
well, let me give you.
Is that better?
If you'll take one and pass it down, then you can separate the cream from the cookies. And here, I'm gonna go this way. Yeah, so you should have an empty bowl and a bowl of Oreos. So just empty. Are you sure there's enough? Would you like to do it, Dad?
Oreos. What do I do?
Okay, so you're gonna separate the cream.
Okay. Cream from the cookie.
Cream from the cookie. Cream goes in one bowl.
This is what my kids love to do for a living. I like
Such fun. Do you need another?
These are brand new. It's a lot of Oreos.
I'm not doing a good job, Jackie. You're not doing a good job.
What, Lisa, you mean you didn't do this?
Does anybody watch Zoe Bates? on the new
You have to make everything.
Magnolia?
Okay, so
I'm
I'm just separating. Hi, people online. I'm just separating the Oreos from the cream.
It's a good time to, go to your fridge, get some wine.
Or peel some Oreos if you happen to have them.
Has anybody watched on the new Magnolia Network, Zoe Bates?
No.
Very, very good show. And she made brownies for her son in college. And all the roommates wanted a different kind of brownie. So she made one big pan, and on one section she put Oreos, and another one she put, Nutella and hazelnuts, and then another section pretzel. It was really great.
I've seen brownies like that.
Yeah.
Leah, what are we putting, are we putting them on that?
So
This is
everybody
adorable.
could either make their challah into these, and there might be like different shaped ones, or that, and I could bake them here.
Okay.
Like the oven, I already turned on the oven, so said if we wanted to bake it over here.
Great.
Good.
Okay, so when you've got a decent amount of cream, you are gonna add a drop or 2 of your color and take a spoon and we're gonna mash it up. So I'm gonna do. No, I've asked before on Instagram
You asked
And-
what?
You can tell, like, which,
what people, sometimes they'll send me, you wanna take one and pass it? Sure.
I'd love to know. So I have a few. Every week we get the cinnamon sugar because my kids love the cinnamon sugar or the churro ones. Actually,
Churro.
So what's the difference between cinnamon sugar and churro? What do you?
One person should be speaking at a time.
What's the difference?
So I will tell you, we are gonna be making a za'atar challah similar to a churro challah, but it involves,
What is that?
Can I have a spoon?
yeah, did I miss you?
Yeah. Should I be passing this along? How many drops of food coloring in the Oreo?
I put 2, and then I'm just gonna mash it up and see. The paper is a little absorbent, so you might need more.
You once did a
Okay,
French onion
guys, so
soup
we're-
one, that was really good.
Oh, what?
French onion soup.
I just need
I
a
mean, there's
one of
really,
each.
it's endless. Like when you think of French onion soup, isn't that what they put it in, a dough?
Yeah, but I would say my,
You heard too many voices.
Oh, we're making the honey cinnamon.
oh my God, I think that one, or that one or the Zafra one. might be-
Wow, I think I just, every week. What's wrong with me?
I'm like, am I cool? I put some Zafra on my challah sometimes.
Yeah, I thought that was.
Not really rule,
Alright,
but
guys.
there is significance to some of the writing.
Oh, but it's not.
Not a rule. Oh, thanks. You put them on that
So
table?
add a few drops to your cream
Yeah.
and then
Ooh.
mix it around. And then, how is everybody doing? Okay, so we didn't give out the dough yet, which we need to do.
Do we make a
I
bracha?
did a bracha, yeah.
We did a bracha. I'm gonna take out.
About the origin of the challah dough being in preschool.
An IJP,
art auction,
yeah.
When they're Jackie came to my house, learn how to make challah from an auction. Prize.
So special.
Should I give this out or how do we want to do this? Should I just
Wow.
put out some balls of dough?
Cool.
It's so special.
Woodhouse with a.
We were just talking about that house, like my kids were trying to remember different spaces,
Yeah.
the kitchen and
I
then
know, I
I
remember
was
that.
like, did you guys move there when, like, as soon as Bob was here? Move out of that house, or how many years were you, like,
No, we were out of that house for a few years when it was on the old Ella house.
Okay, so I'm gonna come around.
With dough.
yeah, that I remember for sure, that Ruben was born.
Is there an extra, look at that?
Yes, we have more. Let me get you some dough.
Good, everyone's good.
Oh, this is nice.
Everything's good. Yeah, my youngest is still at IJP. The boys are. He's turning 4 on Sunday.
Right, birthday.
Oh, wow.
Thank you so much. Wonderful.
Yeah, my youngest is 25 now, so that's
Where in the world?
Guys, sorry. Hang in there. Do you want to just get 3 balls of dough for yourself? I'm just gonna get Cindy.
Yes.
Sorry, I should- Yes, can
Send
you?
Aria the stuff with strict instructions, only come back with King Arthur, but no one.
Do you, by the way, Jackie, do you buy it in bulk?
I don't anymore. I did for a little while.
Because Dr. Tate sells it in bulk for really inexpensive.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I can get you on his list.
Where are the colors?
Who else needs dough? Did I
Yeah,
get?
need some dough.
I need some.
I've
Oh,
been
it's
just
not
since
there?
COVID just making sour, I make challah once a month, and
So
the rest I make
that's the-
sourdough.
I've been using the same challah recipe for 25 years. And it's only 3.5 cups of flour, so that.
So that's actually not enough to make a
No,
It's
bracha.
not enough for the bracha.
That's why I make challah once a month,
That's why, yes. it's like
and then I freeze
part
it,
of it,
and then I make enough for bracha, and then the other weeks I do sourdough.
Oh, I'm
Okay,
gonna
guys.
cook it and freeze it. Give it sourdough another try.
All right,
It
guys,
was a
so
big fail.
Can you move the package? Can you move,
We can't hear you.
That's for.
We need to put you guys louder.
but can you move the package of crackers or whatever they are on, because they're blocking what she's doing? No, right here in the middle.
sorry.
Just put you a little louder, so
Okay.
just,
So guys, now we're gonna flatten out our strands. Some people like to roll them out first and then flatten them. Some people like to use a rolling pin. I'm just all in with my hands. So that's what I'm doing, but you can flatten them any which way till they're about uniform, and it doesn't have to be perfect because I don't like to think of challah as a science, even though it's baking. It's sort of just trial and error. But I'm gonna take my colorful cream and stick it down the center of the challah dough.
No, this is so sensory.
And then I'm gonna take my Oreos and stack them along the line down the center.
Are we making it kind of a long?
So that's the cream that you separated out from the Oreos earlier?
We just
Okay.
colored it. That's all
Got
we did. Just to do a little spin on something fun.
where's my
Now,
cream?
I'm hoping yours is so much better than mine.
Because I got busy with my fingers, girl.
now I'm gonna take,
No.
The whole bowl.
so I'm gonna take the edges of the strands and pinch them together to make my strand buried.
Very. Okay.
And then I'm just gonna roll it out.
These are not like perfectly the same size.
That's okay. That's totally okay.
How flat is flat?
So I'm
Okay.
rolling
Kind of
this
enough. I
over.
would stretch them a little more so you can get that like snake shape.
Yeah, and then once it's in your hand, you can kind of wiggle it down and around. They might come on open a little bit, and that's okay. So the good news is it will always come out delicious because it's Oreos and colored up. So it's not gonna be bad. And then when you've got your 3 strands, you just start braiding in the middle and carefully and tightly fold it up. And if they come apart, that's okay. You can pinch them back or you can keep them open. And you've got yourself a mini challah stuffed. So that is number 1. And how I would top this is I would just egg wash it with egg and a yolk and a little water, and then sprinkle sugar and a little sea salt on top.
Wait, so egg, sea salt, and sugar.
Yes, that's what I would do for a topping. But you could top it with anything you could do.
It's the whole egg, I mean, you scramble it and then.
Yeah, you take the yolk and mix it with water, a little water,
Just the yolk or the whole egg?
just the yolk.
Just the yolk.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, that's what gives it like that brown shiny crust.
Yeah, you can. I guess you can-
Okay, so that's number 1. Now I will give you, I'm
So
gonna
should we
get the
put them
next
into
one.
like tray, foil trays?
Sure, we can.
So there's these.
Oh,
or-
we're supposed to add the schmear to the.
I'm gonna get the next set of balls ready.
nice.
So everybody's gonna get 1 ball for this one.
Wait, you gotta.
Yeah.
Pinch, pinch.
Lower than you. Not quite like that. And then merge it together when I'm like,
Yeah.
you can take the build up from the towel.
Okay, well, you can try the next one. Maybe you'll have better luck.
No.
I'm
better look behind the camera.
Could you bake them as singles, like a little log?
Yeah,
Yeah,
as a log, like one straight
Or even
strand.
around.
yeah.
You can curl it, foil it.
What size challahs are you?
We're gonna have to
making?
strap.
Like this?
I make, no, that's small.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This way it's like a little.
This is broccoli dough.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so
What's the broccoli dough?
The bracha for dough.
So I said, let's put this.
So I took vacation in a town in Massachusetts that's near one of the most famous whole grain bakeries in America. And I wanted to ask them if they'd sell me some starter. You would have thought I had asked them for like a holy relic.
Oh my gosh.
So they gave me the stink eye for days. I had to like really go back and be a good customer for a while. They just don't do that, but it's really there. Because there's so much yeast, wild
it's a
yeast.
beauty.
So I started my own starter.
Oh,
While I was on vacation.
Already?
amazing.
It's the best. But at home, I haven't been very well.
Did we get
So
I just need a knife.
Sharp one
In the
or
middle,
pencil?
start in the
I
middle.
just assumed everyone, sorry, did anyone need help with braiding?
Start in the middle.
Amazing.
Lisa.
Thank you.
Want a sharper knife for that?
Maybe
I
we'll
think it
need a
would.
big old metal chopper.
I know, sweet, I'm like a savory challah person also.
Well,
Jackie,
then
what's your
this
favorite?
one's
But this is
sweet.
cool. It's very cool.
I don't, it's like asking to pick a child. Can't do
Not
it.
dramatic at all. Not dramatic at all.
Okay, guys, while you're working on finishing those up, I'm gonna tell you about the next one.
Do we spray or?
Yes.
Goes like funky.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I saw on
Like you end up
Facebook,
with
like
a fat
your
on
door
top, skinny
roof.
in the
Do you
middle.
have a
It's
special
not so
roof?
pretty.
No, I was with a friend and she said, oh, it says dough room, you should take a picture with it, but everyone thought I'd open a store.
Yeah.
You know, not happening. Would anybody like a tray? Yeah.
Oh, we're starting in a tray this time?
No, this is for that
Oh, I
one.
did that one.
Do you
Oh,
want
know, I
one?
didn't spray those, so go. Come on.
Second versus so much more perfect.
It's not, that's a great braid. And as it rises,
Missy?
they open.
Gorgeous.
Okay,
Thank you.
for our next trick. Thank you. Our next trick is a babka stuffed challah.
Babka stuffed.
Challah. So it's not babka dough, because traditionally babka dough has milk in it. It's a little fluffier. So it's a challah babka. But we're gonna make it the same way and it comes out just as delicious. But here's the honey. Okay, so what we're gonna do is, I'm gonna get you more cups. I'm gonna take a little tahini and a little honey, and mix them together.
What are the ingredients of the dough?
Yeast, rapid rise.
I get
yeast,
that.
A little bit of sugar to activate the yeast. And then, yeah, but then
Do
when
you work
oil,
with the dough,
oil,
with like
an
child
egg,
different doughs, or you just do?
one
I
egg,
just do one
honey.
that I've just judged.
and then salt, like 2 tablespoons of sea salt, and then flour, like a 5
One,
compact
my
flour.
cousin
It's
made
like
it
slow
with
yeast, but
vanilla.
you don't.
Yeah,
It's amazing.
I haven't done that.
From
Yes,
the, did you
but
get
like
her book?
not,
Yeah.
not for long.
Yeah.
I don't know if
It's
it's
a
amazing.
classic challahs.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so I need to pass these
Well, it has to rise.
tahinis around. You want to take one that way and
I'll
do
take this one, yeah?
And the honey and stir it up in these cups. And make your own little mixture. Some people might like it sweeter. Some people might like it seasier. And once you have your mixture, you're gonna take your one dough ball and you're gonna roll it out into a square. And you're gonna take your mixture and spread it across the entire piece. Now, when I'm not demoing, which I've never done before, so thanks for bearing with me, I use a ton of filling. Like I just like stuff it to the gills. But you have to be careful with the liquids. Whenever you stuff anything that you've,
Tahini and honey.
tahini and honey.
Whenever you stuff anything.
Whenever you
The
stuff anything that, like when I do a French onion or something like that, that's been cooked down, you have to make sure that all the water is out of it, that it's as
What
dry.
is the mixture made of? What is the mixture made of?
Honey and tahini. That's it, just honey and tahini.
So it's okay for it to be liquidy, but not water.
Exactly. You don't want, because you want it to be dry enough to bake, dry out enough inside. Sometimes I use a little vanilla paste and add it in with a little sea salt for the honey tahini. But this is what we're using tonight. So we just took a little honey and tahini and mixed it all, and then we swashed it across.
And tahini combo, is it like 50?
It's
As sweet as you want.
It's as sweet as you want it. I just eyeball it. I don't have a, I mean, if it was mine, I would taste it. So that's what I do. And then I'm going to roll the sides in. And then I'm gonna take my challah and roll it away from me as tightly as possible. And it's gonna be messy. And then,
Like a crepe.
like a crepe, and you can do, I just go right ahead and cut it down the center, but sometimes you might have something that is a little sticky or tricky, and you have to freeze it first and get it hardened enough that you can cut it easily. But once you have your two strands, you're gonna take them and twist them.
Oh, fun. Oh my God. It's
And then you're gonna take your pan. I made a baby, but and you put him just in the center. And when he rises, he'll fill the whole tin. And then that's your babka. It's a real messy looking one. But yeah, so that's what you're gonna do if you need any help. Rolling it out flat, then buttering it all down the center and around, and then folding in the sides, then rolling it up, and then cutting it in half the long way, and then twisting it together. So I have a knife when
There's a knife.
Yeah, let me clean it up.
Now it's quite sticky.
And then for the topping, I generally just do a vanilla sea salt. It's like a vanilla sugar sea salt on top. It's really good. And what's great about the tahini is it kind of thickens up and hardens up a little bit, so it won't be oozing out when it's baked.
Did you get an egg wash too?
Yes, but you have to be careful with your brush because it's going to get everything on it when you brush it. So you could only use it for this one, and then you have to wash it. But yeah, here's another knife. Anybody?
There's an egg goes on top of the salted sugar.
The egg wash goes first. I'm gonna recommend that everyone wants to wash their hands when they're done. Yeah. Here's a knife. Anybody?
Yeah, you're gonna cut it down. Or is it all gonna ooze out?
You're gonna do it so quickly. And is this
Yeah,
your
okay. I guess I can use it. Just in two?
just in two?
It was, I'm not doing it. No, take it. I told you I knew.
Okay, so let me get us set up for the third and final challah. And everybody's gonna need.
Rotating them?
Yeah.
The colored, keep going, the colors, I asked your husband, I know, from Federation, to come and just like, tell me, what's my place? It's very quirky. It's in a park, in Inman Park.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, he told me the obvious, like kitchens, do your kitchen, do your bath. My kitchen's in good shape, but I wanted a new, like sexy range, like a Viking or wolf.
Yeah.
And he said, he like gave me permission. I haven't done it yet, but
We said go.
I
for
do
it.
bake
It's
a lot.
worth
He
it.
said like, go do it. So.
Now you have to christen it with a challah. Christen it.
Absolutely.
Now, oh, you're gonna do this? I don't know what we're doing. What? Wait for it. Okay. Yours is special needs. Your hollow.
I'm special and I'm needy.
Will the people at home get copies of your recipes?
Oh, that I don't have any copies of my recipes. It's just a
Oh,
tutorial of how to stuff it in.
oh, okay.
Dishing out the challah bread secret.
I can give the, I
But,
think there's a
um,
challah recipe one of
For
these.
sure, I can write to you the combos that we've done here tonight.
That would be nice.
Yeah. Who else needs stuff?
I use fluffy challah from Shabbat.org.
I'll take a look.
Yeah.
One second. I'll just
It
look at
seems like it takes 10 times
Yeah.
economy
Yeah.
and,
That's interesting. I wonder if we're using the fair color. Exactly. Oh, nice.
Yes, I just gave you like revive something much yummier for you.
Actually. And just Nina, and who else needs stuff?
What, is this for the next?
This is the
Yes,
next one.
this is the last one.
Okay, I have to wash my hands. This is
How many
like-
are we supposed to have this time?
Now,
3 balls, and what we're gonna do is we're just gonna roll them snakes.
who's going?
3.
Like regular.
Yeah, like regular challah. So we are gonna
I'm
do.
sorry, I'm in the middle of a class right now. I'm sorry, I can't talk to you.
That's amazing. So this one is the unstuffed stuffing. So sometimes I will roll my snakes into seasoning instead of stuffing the inside, or I'll take raisins, or I'll take olives or sun-dried tomatoes, and I do it on the outside of each one instead of it stays. You just sometimes you'll pat, but
That's right.
so
You can just see.
you do seeds, which I'm doing this week actually. But we're gonna do za'atar. So what I do is, well, what I like to do with my za'atar actually is to make a mixture of olive oil and za'atar, and then do it just a one roll through the whole mixture on each one and then braid it. But sometimes if I'm doing dairy, I'll take butter and roll it through and then dip it into a mixture of seasonings or spices or
What did I miss? What do you put in first?
And then you just make them olive oil, za'atar, and you roll the whole strand through.
Yes, each strand, so that when you cut it, it's in every bite. So that's what we're gonna do, except I need to figure out what we're gonna put this.
I can go get some bowls.
Can I use those plates?
Yeah, you can get plates. I could get you anything.
And how many do you make a week?
I would say between lately 35 and 85. Depends. I start at 6 a.m. lately.
Then you do it all in a day?
They do it all in a day.
On Thursday or Friday?
Thursday.
And then from Thursday to Friday, you keep them.
And then I package them up Thursday night, and then I put them out in coolers Friday morning, and people, they order ahead of time, so people come and get their,
You don't freeze them from Thursday to Friday. Just keep them.
oh no, they're just in their bags, already packed up and with their names. Well, happy guys.
And they might be goopy, the bag, like when they're taking it out.
No, I have wrap for them.
I'm sorry, tell me again what you were putting on the plates.
I'm putting the za'atar spice. on the
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
And, so I typically mix them. But you can, if you want, do one first and then the other.
No, you know what? There's this thing called.
What kind of oil are you using?
The olive oil for this one. And then I'm just gonna stir. Yeah, we need more.
Beautiful. Get yourself a tin. Look what you got there.
I couldn't do it the normal way.
Is you wrong?
So I had to do the other way.
Right.
I do, you should do everything that you are.
Thanks for bearing with me.
We can have it. We're all mature.
Okay, we can pass these out, or you can come and get one.
So what is the car? What is the?
So it's sumac and sesame. And it's a herb spice. Is it?
Yeah.
The dried out and it's the berry. Oh, it's pretty. It's tie-dye.
It's infinity.
I like it. Infinity sounds pretty
But
good
you want to
for
know what's
holiday
really
day.
cool about the infinity sign?
What?
You put the word, if you put the letter G before it and the letter D after it, it looks like the word good, but it's really, I use it as a dash, so it's God. So it's like God is good.
Okay, and then you dip the, so you're gonna roll each one through. And,
Get the trays ready.
yeah, get your tray ready.
Come. We help with you, Lisa.
Your friend.
When you call a friend, friend on her way. Friend with oily hands.
So,
Is that a placemat that you have the challah on?
can you repeat it?
Is that a placemat that the challah is on, or a special mat?
Silicone mat, a silpat.
Repeat, please.
A silpat, S-I-L-P-A-T. It's a silicone mat and you can bake with it in the oven. Yeah, these were from Amazon. So we're just rolling our guys.
So when you, for these guys that are so coated,
Thank you.
egg on top,
No, so these do not get an egg wash.
and what about the new one?
You can, yeah.
Just kind of like dab around or like whatever dough you can access.
So you've got your 3 pieces and you're just gonna braid them. And I would put a little sea salt on top. And you've got your challah, and it'll crisp up a little bit in the oven, which is nice. So yeah, you can do this format with anything you want, really. That's you could even do something chunky.
Anybody needs a zafar in the?
So those are the 3 challahs.
Jackie, really, like I finished my whole za'atar. That's amazing.
I know, the more the merrier. Are there any questions? Anybody with questions?
So good.
Does it change how long you bake it by what you put in it or on it?
Good question. So when I have something that's a little wetter, I definitely eyeball it and keep it in a little longer. Typically what I do is I do this, and every oven's different, but I do 15 minutes at 350, and then I rotate the pan, and then I do another, if it's a knot, I would do like 5 minutes. I would do 10 minutes for if it was bigger. And then if it's wet, I will do that same process, but eyeball further. 1-5.
That's all.
No, 15, then turn, and then yeah.
How long do you let it rise for?
Another eyeball situation, but I let my challah rise for about 2.5 hours in the bowl, and then after I braided it or stuffed it, I let it rise for another at least hour, and then that just depends on temperature of your house and how your yeast worked that day. And I really just I touch it and see if it springs back and if it's poofy and soft, and then it's ready. So, I mean, there's off chance it could take 40 minutes. There's off chance it could take 1.5 hours. So that's something you would just get used to as you bake it. But in general, it should be fluffy. It should have loosened up.
It should spring right back. It
Yeah.
shouldn't stay
Figured
indented.
out a good, not 100% whole wheat, because I know that doesn't really work, but a somewhat whole wheat challah. Have you figured that out?
The closest I've come to that is my deep-seated challah, where I just
Okay.
put a lot of seeds in the dough. But I've found that the King Arthur bread flour is just the best
Right,
flour.
So what type of seeds?
What type of seeds? I mean, poppy and sesame
Do
and
you like
rye.
everything, Jonathan?
Yep, everything.
Would you repeat again the type of flour?
King Arthur bread flour.
Okay,
The blue
thank
bag.
you.
Yeah.
And also you don't do your strands uniform. You just do them. It doesn't matter if one's a little thicker, one's a little thinner, one's a little bumpy.
So that is definitely something that I know a lot of purists would say they would weigh each ball. And I did used to do that, but I just got into the habit of knowing from doing it so much that I don't weigh it. But I know that probably most proper challah places, people will weigh each dough ball.
Yeah, no, I mean the strands, like your three strands, you don't do them uniform. They just,
No.
it doesn't matter. They don't have to be the same width or no bumps. Or
I'm fine with it that way, but I think that all the people who weigh each ball like to have it pretty equal on each.
Okay.
And they know exactly.
But it doesn't have to be. You can kind of like just embrace the like it just rises and kind of looks delicious and it looks yummy and tastes yummy if it's not perfect.
Yeah.
Kind of the nut perfection is part of the
Sorry, I don't
vibe.
These are hard to close at the end, right?
Yeah, they just
Yeah.
tuck
Tuck.
or.
What oven are you using?
Okay, for baking, that my husband, do you want to put some? Did you rise again?
Oh, they were cold. I think they should.
Okay, they should go in that one again.
I want mine.
Okay.
We, yes, so thank you, Leah, so
Thank you, Jackie. We're going to finish off our challahs and then just move on to the learning part of the class. I'm going to give everybody another minute to finish off their challahs, clean up their little area, and then I'll just give you a peek at mine. Those are my three. And we're going to get.
Wow.
Thanks. I'll let you
Beautiful.
taste. We'll get started with the class part in about 2 minutes. The oven is turned on here, so if anybody does, I think they need to rise a little bit, but if anybody wants to stick theirs in before they leave, they can.
What if you don't bake them tonight?
If you don't bake them tonight, we'll put them in, wrap them tight, put them in the fridge. Jackie, with baking. So Lisa just asked if she doesn't bake it tonight. Is that okay?
Yeah, I think you could.
Wrap
Yeah,
just wrap it, I think, tight so that it doesn't get like hard from the fridge. The dough doesn't get hard. And then just egg wash it tomorrow.
And then how long are we cooking it?
And I would cook, well, I didn't see the size of yours, but I would cook it at 350. This one you'll put 25 minutes and you'll be fine. Yeah, I would say in all of them, maybe this little guy, less time.
And 350.
350, yeah. And I will take your garbage.
Unless your oven is haunted, then you might have to adjust it for you.
This was her first class. I'm done, yes. Done. Okay, so I'm gonna pass around the copies rather than the books because I don't want the books to get oily with everyone's. This is just bacon pots. Anyone wants a little soup or wine?
Is that a handout?
Yes. I'm gonna put it on the screen, right?
Could you save them for the people at home also?
Yeah, we're gonna share.
I'm gonna share the screen, but most of it is not. Share screen.
So those of us at home would like to get a copy of what the handout is.
I'm gonna put it into the chat box. Well, can you see this? Can you see it now? It's on the screen?
Not really
Yes.
well, no, I cannot.
You cannot. I'm gonna ask Ari to send you a PDF.
My son's birthday.
Okay. So now that we've baked bread, we're going to talk about bread. Well, now that we've shaped and folded bread, we're going to bake it at home. We're going to talk about bread. It's being recorded, yeah. Just pictures, please. Thanks. Okay, so today's lesson, welcome. Today's lesson is about bread.
And bread represents the basic human need for food. And more broadly, it represents all human needs for sustenance. So if you look at your first exercise, well, kind of if you don't look, don't look, and think of any words or phrases that you have the word bread. Pass the bread. What?
Pass thy bread upon the waters.
What is, yeah, what's the meaning? What's break bread? What does that mean?
When you sit down at the table and have a meal to find together.
Right, have not just like bread literally but like have a meal, a full meal with probably other people.
I like the
Hospitality, like
Right.
Abraham,
Yes.
breadwinner.
Breadwinner, meaning
taking home bringing home the dough.
bringing home the dough.
Oh, come on, make it so if you know where to get it.
Bread, well, and if you look at your figure 4.1, breadwinner, right? We said that one.
Yes.
Put bread on the table, bread basket, and especially productive region, the bread and butter of the best thing since sliced bread, and circuses. I've never
Can
heard
you
of.
make that bigger? It's very small and thank you. That's
The
great.
breadwinner, someone's a breadwinner.
Yes, someone's a breadwinner. The staff of life, common reference to bread. Bread, slang for money. Dough, slang for money. So, you know, from these words and phrases that include the word bread, we see that bread is used more broadly to represent this human need for sustenance. And accordingly, this is reflected in spirituality. So just like bread is the mainstay and staple of humanity, it is a very significant, this is reflected in spirituality, and therefore it has a lot of mitzvot and observances that pertain to bread. So we're going to talk tonight about some of those mitzvahs and observances, and then we'll get a little deeper into the Kabbalah of bread and talk about the process of bread making and how that parallels our personal inner spiritual work. Okay, so we'll talk about 3 observances, and then we'll get into a little bit of the Kabbalah of bread making. And yeah, that will be it. So the 3 mitzvah observances that we'll talk about are the blessings that you make before and after bread, the hand washing that you do for bread, and the mitzvah, a little bit about the mitzvah of Challah, and then we'll go on, we'll take it a little deeper into the Kabbalah of bread. So with blessings before and after, every time you eat something, and this was last month's class, every time you eat food, you recite a blessing, and this blessing acknowledges that God is the source of our sustenance. We learned last month that all the different foods have different blessings, and bread has its own blessing. What's that blessing?
Hamotzi.
Lechem min haaretz, and it's the blessing that's just for bread. And there's a couple of things that are unique about this blessing. And one of them is that when you say if you're sitting down to a meal and you have bread at that meal and you say hamotzi, it encompasses all the other foods and all the other blessings. So you're covered. So you say hamotzi, you wash your hands, you say hamotzi at the beginning, and then you don't need to say any of the other blessings on all the different other foods that you eat. If you aren't doing that and you aren't eating bread at the beginning, then you need to say the blessing on the fruit and the blessing on the vegetable and the blessing on the piece of the cookie and the blessing on the dessert, all the different things, all the separate the blessings separately. If you start your meal with bread and you make the hamotzi on the bread, then you're covered. And that is because of the special status that bread has, and everything else is secondary to it, and therefore it's included in the statement of hamotzi lechem min haaretz, who brings forth bread from the earth, and now all the other blessings are covered. Another distinction is in the blessing after the bread. So after you eat, you bench, you eat the grace after meals. The full benching, the 4 blessings, you only say the full grace after meals if you've had a meal that included bread. If it did not include bread, you say a much shorter after blessing. It's not considered a full meal. It's not considered a su'udah. It's not considered a sit-down meal in the full sense. It's just kind of like a snack. If it had bread, then you have a standalone, full, long version of the after blessing. Exactly.
So if you have a cookie, a little bit.
So you're doing a bracha just on the cookie, and then you're doing a very short after blessing. It's like a 2 dance. Which sometimes like kids don't want to wash for bread because they don't want to say the long after blessing. Like, no, I don't want to say the whole thing. Okay, so that was the one observance around bread and adults. Yes. Correct.
Actually, there's a story with my husband's grandmother. She wrote into the Rebbe that she really likes to eat bread, and she needs to eat it. You know, she was a refugee from Stalinist Russia, and she was just complaining about some things. And the Rebbe actually told her that she could wash in the morning and bench in the evening.
Oh, really?
She likes to eat bread 3 meals a day. So a lot of my husband's family takes that on. They're like, no, I can wash in the morning and bench in the evening.
Right,
Really
wash-
not allowed to do
wash
that.
once.
But-
No, you probably could do it, right? So that was like special permission, but you could exactly. But like if you're eating it without a certain amount of time passing and a certain amount of like if you really are continuously eating it, then you can get on. But otherwise, you need special permission, like Babi Daich. If you're eating bread all day.
And what about, nowadays that like a few weeks ago, I had to make one that was gluten-free and vegan. So do you need like certain?
Yes.
You need the 5 grains.
One of the 5.
grains.
So there is something called like you can make bread. Yes, you can make gluten-free bread. For it to be hamotzi, it needs to have one of the 5 grains. But also you can do like flour, and if there's no water, there's juice. Then it becomes mizonot. So sometimes you know how you find it's considered cake. It doesn't have the flour, water combo. So that's how something. I mean, I don't think there's any bakeries that do it here, but in New York you can get mizonot bread.
Yes. It says.
Right, so it doesn't have enough water to make it a real dough. So it's kind of like a cake dough, and then you don't make the bracha motzi on it, but it's kind of like a loophole. But I was gonna get to the measurements, but it doesn't matter. You can read these after. Okay, so then there is the washing for bread. So that's the other observance second observance that we'll talk about, called netilat yadayim, the ritual washing of hands. So of course, before you eat, you should always wash your hands. But this is not a hygiene washing, it is a ritual washing. And the reason why we do it is interesting. There's 613 mitzvot, we hear that all the time, 613. Of those 613, many can only be done when the temple was standing and there was active service in the temple. In fact, there's only 270 of those 613 that we can do today. So I can't do math, but 613 minus 270, that's how many only apply in the Beit HaMikdash, in the temple. And so the hand washing actually is one of those that comes from the temple, and the priests, because their service was the only job that they could have was working in the temple. They didn't have any other farm or field or any other day job. So they had no way of making money. So the way that they had food and the way that they were fed was that everybody else in Israel, when they worked their fields and made their doughs, they would tithe and teruma and meiser, certain portions of all their foods. They would bring it to the temple, to the Kohanim and the Levim. So challah was the portion of bread that people would separate from their dough to give to the Kohen so that his family had bread to eat. And before the Kohen would eat that bread portion that he got, he would have to be in a state of ritual purity, so he would wash his hands. So we wash our hands today because it's an opportunity to fulfill and to remember a temple mitzvah. So it's one of those that the rabbis instituted that we continue doing today as a tangible reminder of all these mitzvot that we no longer do in the temple. Yes.
We have Kohanim in our communities. Why don't we give that piece of the challah to the Kohen in our communities?
So all those mitzvot that we do, there's all that 630 minus 270, those mitzvot that we don't, that don't apply when the temple isn't standing, all those mitzvahs of teruma and meiser are the ones that only apply when the temple is standing.
Yeah, but you're still doing something with that little piece of challah.
You're marking it as separate and holy, and you're burning it, but we don't have that system anymore of the Kohanim working in the temple and therefore needing to be given our tithe. They have jobs. This is all going to come back when the temple's back, please God. So we are washing our hands as a everyday reminder of the last mitzvot of the temple. I found that interesting. I actually didn't know why. I knew it was like something to do with ritual purity and interesting. Okay. So the basics of hand washing, if you look in your printout of the book, and I'll just scroll down over here, we'll just go through the actual how-to quickly. So, okay, so first of all, if you look at page 79, you will see figure 4.2. It gives you a very classic washing cup. So to wash your hands for bread, so first of all, your hands are actually supposed to be clean because it's not a hand washing for cleanliness. So if your hands are not clean, then you're supposed to wash them first so that they're clean. So that when you do this ritual washing, you're actually the water and your full hand, there's direct contact and there's nothing in between. Mikveh, yes, exactly. So you're kind of cleaning away everything else first so that you're washing. So the requirements for Netilat Yadayim are water. It should be poured from a vessel and it should be poured by human action. So water, there's no soap involved. You can't do it with like alcohol, hand sanitizer. It should be clear. It shouldn't be like brown, bad smelling, dirty water. It should be clean water. You're washing from your fingertips to your wrist. So it's not just like a fingertip wash. It's all the way to your wrist. And the water should be poured from a vessel. So you're kind of putting that washing cup under the sink, filling it up, pouring it over your hands. And it should be not cracked, not broken, not perforated. It should hold enough water to wash your entire hand. And that shows you a little picture of a classic washing cup. It should be poured out of the cup through human action. So you can't turn on the sink and then just go 1, 2, like just run your hand under the sink. There's supposed to be human action involved. Placing your hands under running water does not count. Rarely, if one wash is enough, and we do it, some people do it twice, some people do it 3 times. So the reason once is theoretically enough, the reason why you do it more than once is because if there was any ritual impurity on your hands, then the first wash would kind of become impure with whatever is on your hands. So you do a second one, and then I guess you can kind of like keep going for infinity. So you do 3, just because we're a little OCD like that. But I was just thinking of like when you rinse your pot, like how many times do you want to rinse it? So you make sure that there's no soap that's going to be in your chicken. Like you just rinse it a couple times so that there's nothing left. So you're just washing off that impurity. Chabad does it 3 times. Some people do it twice, but once is technically enough.
Before you bake.
This is before you eat bread. No, this is the Netilat Yadayim, and then you make the halotzi. No, before the baking is just the hand washing for cleanliness. It's before every meal if there's bread at the meal. Yes, and really there's supposed to be bread at every meal because bread is what makes it considered a meal, and you want to be able to do the full blessing, the full after blessing. So, okay, so if you look at figure 4.3, it's a quick hand washing tutorial. So we'll just each read a step. So Lisa, you start with number 1. Do you see it? Do you have it? 120.
Prepare your hands
Yes,
for
go ahead.
ritual washing by cleaning them thoroughly with soap and water if necessary and drying them well. Also remove rings and any foreign objects so that the ritual cleaning water will come in direct contact with every part of your hand.
Okay, so step 1 is preparing your hands. Step 2, Sandrine.
Hold the washing cup in your right hand and fill it with water. Transfer the filled cup to the left hand.
3, Nina.
Position the right hand so that the fingers are apart and the fingertips are pointed slightly upward, allowing the water to reach every part of the fingertips to wrist and 1 continuous flow for water. Over right hand, repeat the action 2 more times per tone of 3 points.
Transfer cup to the wash right hand, taking care that it does not touch the unwashed left hand or any contaminated water on top. This is best achieved by using a towel to hold the cup.
Refill the cup if necessary. Repeat step number 3 with the left hand, pouring water over it 3 times in succession.
Okay. Now you get the number 6.
Rub the two wet hands together in a scrubbing motion and lifting it slightly recite the blessing. Baruch atah Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu v'tzotah v'tzivanu on Tfilat v'dayah.
Jackie said.
Dry hands, wow. Proceed immediately to make the motzi blessing on the bread. Do not speak or engage in any other activity between the ritual washing and the beginning of the meal.
So what's that about? Just respect? Just
No, because you don't want to, sorry.
They're not talking?
Yeah.
Because that blessing is, it's like part one of the eating the bread. You're not supposed to make a separate from the beginning to the end. So you wash. Yeah, you wash, you don't talk, you also don't wait too much time. So like if you've ever been in like dad's house, it's like because you're rushing everybody, like because everyone's chatting and he's like, no hipstick. You can't make too much of a break either with talking or with time between the beginning of that observance and the end of it.
Does that include hand signals?
No, it does not.
Really?
If it's
Leah, could you scroll down just a little more so we can see
sorry,
the whole
that's the
blessing?
rest of
Thank
it.
you.
That's the blessing, and that is the okay. So the third observance around bread that really is not the focus of the class tonight is about the mitzvah of separating challah. So we'll just, if you've been at any of our other challah baking workshops, we focused on this a little bit more. But when you are baking bread, if you are baking more than, we said, less than 2 pounds, you do not separate challah at all. 2 to 3 pounds, you separate without a blessing, and 3+, you do separate. So in the process of baking challah, once you have a dough, you rake off a piece to remember the piece of challah they gave to the priests, and you put it, you say a blessing on it, and you put it aside. What we'll do sometimes, Dina mentioned this before, if you don't usually bake that much bread and if you're baking challah, then it's just an opportunity to do a mitzvah. So you can triple or whatever it is till you get enough pounds out of dough so that you can make the blessing and then freeze the bread.
How did you know, like between 2 and 3 pounds? I mean, it's a bag of flour. A bag of flour, and that's based, no, but I'm just saying, like in, the laws of when you divide and when you say the prayer. I mean, where is it? It's the code of Jewish law. But did they use pounds?
So they didn't. They used sizes, and then at a certain point when it was codified,
But they did use measurements. They just used like different.
Different ways. So how was it? At what point was it then translated into pounds? And if you're in Europe and you use kilograms,
right? So it's debatable. That's why it's always like 5 to 6 pounds. It's like the size of an egg, the size of a bigger egg. The eggs, was it a goose egg? Was it
right? So
it is debatable, but I think there is a whole transmission and process of this becoming codified into like Shulchan Aruch, which is like the code of Jewish law that is Mishnah Berurah, like what is followed today. And then so the most accepted, I think, is about almost a 5-pound bag of flour, maybe minus 2 cups, but it's about that. You can make it broth.
So isn't there like some magical, not magical, but some type of amazing like spiritual
There's
thing that
also
happens when you make it?
there's cup measurements, so it's like up to 8 cups is. This is in here. I think it's in. Actually, it's not. It's in this. It's in the book, the appendix. Right, you would need to triple it. You would need a triple. It's 12 cups is separating with a blessing.
12? Yeah.
So then how are we able to do
That's
that?
why I do it once a month.
Right. And then you say the blessing and you say a prayer, and then we'll talk we'll move on to the Kabbalah of bread, and we'll talk back about why.
A little Nina box there.
dollars at work.
Little box there. These are Ninas.
Do not touch. Okay, so we'll go deeper into the Kabbalah of bread, and we'll touch back onto why you why you make the blessing when it's a dough and not at any other point in the process. Kabbalah teaches that there is the physical and spiritual sides of our existence mirror each other. And so just as bread is the mainstay of physical life, so too the process of bread making exists in our spiritual lives, in our spiritual work, in our spiritual self-growth, and in our avoda. And the process of bread making is a model for our avoda. So we're going to look at, there's a lot of steps in bread making. We're going to look at the three main ones, and we're going to talk about what they are in physical terms of sowing and winnowing and kneading, and then what those each represent in our spiritual work. So the three steps that we're going to look at in the process of making bread, and there are many more steps, but we'll just give it three general ones, are sowing, the planting, winnowing and selecting, and then kneading. And we'll talk about each of those. Let me see what we're up to. I'm kind of skipping around in the book, so you're not going to really, I'll just tell you when we get to a text which one we're up to. I changed the order. Okay, so the first step we're talking about is sowing. So sowing, if you look in your book at page 84, it is text number 4. And sowing is the idea of taking a seed and putting it into the soil, into the ground, basically planting. And let's look at text 4 to get an idea of what the spiritual service of sowing represents. Who would like to read? Anyone, any volunteers? Go ahead.
The soul's descent.
Mm-hmm.
The soul's descent into the body is indeed an enormous descent, coming down from its place of glory, to become invested within a materialistic physical body and an animal soul full of materialistic desires. But this is a descent for the sake of ascent. This is like the growth of a field whereby a plenitude of grain is brought forth by sowing. So too, it is with the descent of the soul into the body and the scattering of the people of Israel in the 4 directions of the world. All this is for the sake of the growth that sprouts forth in terms of the revelation of godliness. For although the heavens are loftier than the earth, only the earth has the power to make grow a huge abundance of blessing.
Okay, so imagine somebody who's never seen or heard of farming, never met a farmer, never seen the process, has only seen the product. And they'll come across a bag of seeds, I don't know, seeds that are edible. And so they're about to eat them. And then this farmer walks by and says, wait, don't eat those. Instead of eating them, why don't you dig up the soil beside you and plant them? And the person that thinks that would be a waste of good seed says, why would I do such a wasteful thing, and bury them in the soil? And the farmer would then explain, well, if you bury them, then they'll decompose. And then if you take good care of the soil and the field and you water them and you pull the weeds, then in a couple of months, crops will grow. And this person who doesn't understand this process might say, why would I go through the trouble if I can eat them right now? And the farmer might explain, if you eat them now, you'll have, a handful of food, you'll have one meal. And if you sow them in the earth, you'll have food for an entire year. So the inner spiritual parallel of the story is that our soul is like the seed, and it doesn't initially understand why it's got to leave its glorious existence as a spiritual being in, besides God in heaven, and be buried in a materialistic body and corrupted, decomposed by this materialistic life. But Jackie just read, like the seed, this soul is investing in the body, and this investment produces much greater results than the soul could have achieved had it stayed in its lap of luxury, in God's lap of luxury. So that ability that it's going to now, that goodness that it's going to bring to the world, the light that it's going to bring to the world, the repair that it's going to bring to the world, the godliness that it's going to bring to the world can only be brought through it being put into a body, put and into a materialistic life. So just like that seed is being put into the soil, decomposing, and then a year's full of crops can grow. That's just like the soul's journey of leaving this very comfortable, blissful, godly spot and coming into the world. And the reward is so many more times bountiful than its existence had it been purely spiritual. So that is the first step of the Kabbalah of bread, where we're taking our soul and it's going through the same process like a seed that's planted in soil and then growing this beautiful crops and trees and things that then sustain other people for years and generations. The next step is this selecting. There's the winnowing, selecting, and sifting, and all of them are the same idea of choosing. So you're separating good from bad, and you're selecting the winnowing part of it, the selecting and the sifting are all part of the bread baking. And the winnowing, those three steps are, there's three general categories of choices that we make in our everyday life. So on the most basic level, we choose between good and evil, or between, right and wrong. And that would be like winnowing, which is the removing the chaff from the grain, but it's the biggest pieces of like the bad stuff from the good stuff. It's like the most obvious separation of good and bad.
It's the stalk from the chaff, right? The stalk from the grain.
It's the winnowing. The chaff and the kernels are thrown up into the wind, which carries away the lighter chaff, while the heavier kernels are caught in a basket below. But it's clearly like the part that you want and the part that you don't want, just the process of just separating them. Then, so those are choices that we make every day. And obviously that's the easier and the clearer choices. Then it gets a little more subtle and that's the second, the selecting is when the choice becomes a little more subtle, and the difference between the right and the wrong is a little less obvious. And in these situations, you need to carefully examine the consequences. Sometimes that will help you gain clarity of which one is the right and wrong thing to do, what's going to happen, kind of like seeing the future of each choice. And sometimes it means seeking guidance from somebody else who can help you make that choice. So that would be a little more subtle, a more refined selecting. And in the process of bread baking, so after you've winnowed and you've selected the larger pieces of chaff from the kernels, there still remain smaller fragments of chaff or other impurities mixed in with the grain. So the next step is a more discerning selection by hand or machine that picks out the remaining small pieces of inedible matter from the grain. So it's a more refined selecting, separating. And then you go on to sifting, where the spiritual, the avoda part of it, you don't have to sift anymore. No, but I think the flour that you have in the bag is like already sifted, right? Right. So in the bread, in the avoda, in our work, that process is sometimes the choice is not between good and bad, but rather two different options for good. Like you have this good option, this good choice, and this good choice, and you have to just figure out which is the right one for you. And there you need to look within, and it's not as easy, and just do that work and to figure out which is the right one for you and for fulfilling your life's mission.
Can you give me an example, please?
You give me an example. Two good choices, like this, I could do this and I could do this. Which one's the right one for me?
Versus like you got these two mitzvahs, you can only do one of them. Take care of your body and go to a Challah class type of thing. Exactly.
Two good choices. Which one's right for you? It's not a right or wrong.
Right one to do. So you have to speak to someone, you look inside.
There isn't like this is right and this is wrong. There's right for you. Which one speaks to you, to your mission, to you being successful? Like which one do you need for you to do you? Which one? It's usually not the easy one, right? That is,
great. So if it's harder than that choice,
possibly. So in the bread making process, this is finally the kernels, I'll just read it. Finally, the kernels are milled into flour, but the kernel has many layers, several outer layers of bran, starchy body, a nutrient-packed germ. You can look at the picture, the figure 4.5, and numerous other components. See illustration. The complex anatomy of the kernel is what creates the possibility of the many different kinds of bread that can be made. So that's the most subtle selection process. And of course, life would be simpler if we never had to make tough choices. Then it would also be devoid of meaning and meaningful achievements. And it's the struggle to separate the bad from the good and to navigate our options and opportunities, yes, that give us.
Enjoy it while it lasts, it's going to go away.
That's what gives us ownership of our lives, makes us feel like we are in a position that we're in a life that we chose for ourselves. It takes away, gives us that ownership. It can take away that victim mentality and gives meaning to our lives. So yeah, again, it's not supposed to be easy. It would be a lot simpler if we weren't making those choices, but the choices are such a big part of our work.
I mean, dough is an amazing substance.
Dough is an amazing.
You take nothing and water.
Right.
You create something.
You take these most like all these little tiny separate. So that's actually the third step that we'll talk about is kneading, which is what you were just saying, which in bread making, there's this process of like taking something and making it into as tiny little separate particles. That's the first part of the process. And the second part of the process is bringing it all back together, making it back into one whole cohesive dough. So there's this, you take grain in its natural state is many small kernels, and then you make it into even more tiny, small, separate little pieces of tiny particles of flour. And then you reverse this process by mixing the flour with water and other ingredients, and you bind it into one cohesive whole. And only then can you make the blessing, because this process is the same process underlies everything that we do in this world. We're in this world to make this world into a home for God. And making bread is such a big part of making a home, part of your home. And so making this world into God, really making this world into a home for God parallels this process. So one of the rules of fulfilling the mitzvah of Challah is that the blessing can only be made over the dough. You can't take the bag of flour and make the blessing, even if you're planning to make it into a dough. You can't take a 5-pound bag of King Arthur flour and separate a cup of it and make the blessing. You can only make the blessing and do the mitzvah over a dough. The deeper, we'll end with the reason for this, which is Kabbalistic and really similar to what Nina was just saying in text 5. Nina, will you read it, please?
Sure. The purpose of the mitzvah of Challah is to elevate our material activities and unite them with godliness. This is represented by the dough, which combines flour and water. Flour is comprised of many particles, disparate specks. The water unites them into a single entity. In a spiritual sense, this represents the idea that material things which are separate and apart, like the disparate specks of flour, are unified by means of Torah, which is referred to as water.
So
I was thinking there's that in Kamach in Torah.
Yeah, right. So en Kamach in Torah, yeah, and also like Torah is compared to water.
Right.
And so the definition of materialism and the opposite of godliness is everything being separate, and then God represents unity. So you take this process of taking all these like very separate little particles of flour and unifying them with water, which is Torah, and that is the reflection of our service in this world. And then it grows, and then it feeds us.
It's like there's something alive about dough.
And I think what's really cool, what I've learned, is that you really can never screw up your dough, right? Like you could, I have. Well, absolutely. Yeah. You have to have faith in it. It's all about the faith in it. Like I have,
you can
eggs, and I've added them to the dough, and it worked. Like
I know it's true.
It's pretty resilient.
It is very resilient.
It's so resilient, and it's so. I think it's such a metaphor. It's so metaphorical, like what we're seeing here, and that it's
And then look how many cool things you can add to it. Like you can spice it up every which way. You could just bring so much of your own flavor and style, and like I don't know.
Which also as a human being,
right? You're supposed to
bring your own flavor to it. You're not meant to just be this. I'm this with this.
They're not supposed to all be perfectly
right
weighed and perfectly balanced. No fun.
You just said that materialism is the exact opposite of godliness.
No.
That's what I heard. You said that materialism is the opposite of godliness or God or. That's what I heard.
Actually, what I heard Leah say was that it all comes together. Echad, what do you say in the morning, at night? Shema Yisrael, Echad. Everything is one. Everything is united under godliness.
Materialism is separate, so it's not God.
It's just, this is a whole other conversation. It's just covered with a klipa. It's just, Hashem created the world on purpose and hid himself. Olam, Melashon, Helam, like it's covered. So the things you're seeing as not godliness is because there's a shell over it. There's a husk and a shell, and you have to get to it. But inside, the root of everything is godliness.
Oh, ultimately, yes, everything is, we're trying to bring everything back to God, but the way that it represents itself, if something that more self-absorbed and selfish something is, the more removed it is from godliness. Now you're just trying to like bring it back.
Okay, that's what you're saying. I'm so sorry.
Yes, but that's our class. And if anyone has anything to add or any questions, please go ahead. If you have any questions about the challah baking or the topping, what I want to do is, Jackie, I think I'm going to send an email with just like a basic challah dough recipe. And then
Yes.
just like some of the different ideas for topping.
That would be wonderful.
And then I'll include some of the PDFs that we have over here because we didn't get to braid. We didn't even, well, yeah, we couldn't do everything tonight, but there's so many different ways to braid. And I don't know how to do a 6 braid. I don't have enough challah dough to show us. Maybe that will be next time. If you know, I want to show you the 6 braid. The 6.
I have a
I
great,
know.
just a
hack?
mnemonic device. It's what's the
octopus?
So you're starting with 6 braids, and then whichever one has their hands up longer is the one that goes braided. And then you
just bring
pick
it
up
to the
that
middle.
one, and that one had its hands up longer. Then you go like this, and then you pull that one. Look, it's a cross. I have it on my friend Esty Herman has it on Instagram.
Okay, cute. So maybe we'll link some
tutorial.
braiding tutorials as well. So everybody look out for that email. I'm just gonna turn this around so you can say hey to everybody. Actually, I'm gonna stop my stop share.
Thank you, Yashikoa.
That's the one you
Go
bring
like
down.
Israeli
So
woman,
then you always bring that one up, and then okay, that one was up the longest. So now you bring that one up, and that one was up the longest.
I just do like
she
the
made like
laziest braid.
20 shapes, like amazing.
I'll tell you, you know what, I do like the laziest braid. I just like take a piece of challah dough, like a log, and then I take a knife and I just do 2 slits. I don't even cut it into 3. And then so it's like attached to the top already, and then and it just like rises and there's that tar on top. And like you can't tell if it's a neat or messy braid. It's delicious. It's literally like, I'm like, I don't even start.
I didn't even braid it. I just made it as a
There's no
double
rolling,
braid.
there's no strands. I'm just like,
You know what I do the most is the one-stranded bolka.
I don't know how to.
It's a fake braid.
It's a fake 8.
It's a
But then
fake
it gets
8.
it like.
It's perfect.
What I did.
It's perfect. It's like you twirl it. It looks like what we grew up with the bulka
Right, the
in shul, like the
Yeah.
kiddush challah, but it looks like a braid. And
It's like a figure, it's like an 8.
yeah,
and
and
then
then
it comes
you
back up like the
exactly,
little.
and it looks like you braided it, but it's one
like a mini
strand.
braid. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to learn that right.
So I don't have any fancy braiding, but like whatever, maybe next time we'll get some Play-Doh.
yes, there
or
is.
some braids.
I can show you how to do it. It's super simple.
That is the biggest hack. The other hack was like
This
that
is
I
the
learned
biggest
from what's her name? Maggie was like I hardly
Is she still
knead.
here?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
hardly knead. I like
Yeah,
literally
she taught us how to
knead
knead
for like
that.
30 seconds.
Leah,
Knead,
come
like you'll see. Taste it.
And I
It's
saw
like
you did, like
hardly
you use
any-
gravity to kind of
Yeah.
sometimes just flip
So
around.
this,
Right.
this hack is, wait now, watch, I'm gonna remember.
Yeah.
Because-
And then
Okay,
you have to like,
okay,
yeah.
pull through
but don't you have
and
to
then
like, just-
flip.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, wow, I like the
And
little
then-
individual.
Man, I gotta memorize.
Yeah, and it
that
looks like a
one.
mini braid, but it's one thing. It's
Wow.
very cool.
Whoa.
Wow, very cool.
Okay. I know.
Amazing, Julian.
I think
That
I'm
was
gonna,
super fun.
I don't know, another laptop.
That looks like a braid, right?
Yeah.
And it was,
All right, well, thanks everyone.
Thanks, Jackie.
Thank you.
Challah, they think of. all
Thank you.
they have these in-
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Like thinking about this.
Thank you. This was really great.
It was.
Thanks for joining us online. I wish
Enjoyed it.
we could give you some dough through but Zoom is not that cool. All right, good night.
Story is really.
Good night.
Good night.
Yashikoa.